here we are,
We appear to be live.
live for Noised. Hope you enjoy your dinner.
We have
Don skipping his meeting. Good job.
Yeah, we have people showing up. All right, I gotta adjust my screen so I'm not like seeing the video of ourselves because it gets weird.
No, it'll destroy your mind.
Yeah, it's like because it's like a couple of seconds behind, so it's like, am I talking to myself in the past? Like, is this where like when they do like a sci-fi story about like a clone, and then the clone and the original person like have to fight over who's the real one?
Yeah, the real one lives 5 seconds in the future.
Let's see, that one should win, right? Because he like knows what the other guy's gonna do, right? Because he's 5 seconds ahead.
Yeah.
So he should
never win.
Yeah, that's rough. You gotta like find a plan where like you can like set a trap because there's gotta be like you gotta deal with a time distortion.
Don's got meetings. Just skip.
Oh no. For us. This meeting could have been an email chain. Just hit reply all and send out your concerns to everyone in the company. They will appreciate it.
Okay, so today we're talking about cheapskate wargaming.
Yeah,
which is everyone's favorite topic.
Yes. Well, it's one of those funny things where, like, because some people just legit don't have like very much money, but they still want to do some gaming. Some people have money, but they don't want to spend it on gaming, so they want to game on the cheap. And some people have plenty of money, but they want to game cheap, like as a challenge or something. Like you see people who do like a $50 army or $100 Warhammer army. So this is kind of like applicable to like everybody, I suppose, depending on. So we're not really. I mean, we joke around a lot, but we're not really meaning cheapskate as like a negative thing. Like whether you are just trying to get started on gaming on a small budget, or you just want to see like some cheap options. That's kind of more the vibe, I think. So
unless you're building the sprue army, which is both cheapskate and impressive.
Well, there's like a whole different level. You become so cheap that it turns back around and becomes like high effort. I think being cheap for me is also like, to me, cheapskate is also like it has to be not massive effort. So like building the sprue army is like almost more work than just like working overtime so you can buy some space marines. The granny grading like 6mm armies, those are probably like on the cheap and lazy side. But like for me, because if I'm cheap, I'm also like not wanting to spend like 200 hours on it,
I am glad though we fired shots at the granny grade people right off the bat.
Yeah. I mean, they've been left unmolested for too long. They'll think they run the place. Probably run like irregular miniatures out of business.
Let's say a quick hello to Ledanto. Good to see you, Jason.
Hey. Yeah, always good to see
you. Soup.
Yeah,
hope you soup.
Please soup responsibly. You know how it goes. You start on a soup, and all of a sudden there's tomatoes everywhere. Terrible incidents. So we're gonna sort of kick off, I guess, talking about the miniature side of things, and we'll kind of talk about terrain, and then we'll talk about painting. So it's like a story, like it rhymes, right? So when it comes to like, and I think miniatures on the cheap is like that's what most people like think of initially, like because what everyone knows about Warhammer is that it's like super expensive, right? You have to buy 2,000 Space Marines, and they cost $200 each. So there's like a handful of ways of like getting. So we're not starting with the principle of like you have to play tournament level Warhammer 40,000. We're starting with the principle of you want to do wargaming. So once you kind of expand it out, because a lot of times you'll get. I was complaining about this on the blog a while ago. Wargaming isn't expensive. Warhammer is. And every time you do that, you always get people who will start making complaints about what your arguments will say they aren't really valid, but they'll turn out they're really just meaning like they want to play Warhammer. And playing Warhammer cheap is like there's like different tactics and stuff. But one of them is applicable. And this is one that like a lot of times when you see like articles about like cheap wargaming, people overlook, and that is like buy used shit. Go on eBay and find somebody who's selling off, like put in like almost anything you're looking for and put the word lot after it, bolt action German lot or Eldar lot or whatever, and you'll find like a pile of stuff. Now, the reason I think a lot of people overlook that is, well, one, sometimes it's like covered in 2,000 layers of paint and you have to like do a little work there. But sometimes you can get like a stash. A lot of times it feels like it's people who bought a bunch of stuff and then it turned out they didn't want to play. So they're just like getting rid of it for, a third of the price or whatever. It's half built. Some of it is still in the sprues, and you can just get a pile of stuff. But I think a lot of times people don't like count that because they're building Warhammer army. So getting like 17 Eldar Guardians and a land speeder is not really helping you play Warhammer. But if you're building some dudes for like 5150 or something, look at me like name dropping other people's games. Ooh. That way it's not shilling. It doesn't matter. You just need some space dudes, right? Or whatever, some dudes offloading some old bull action stuff. So if you are just looking for a way to get some wargaming going, look for stuff. I used to have this huge box of plastic D&D minis because I don't know if they like stopped doing the random. You get like boxes of them. It just be random minis in each box because they were used for the collectible minis game they did. And after a while, people start selling them off. You can do the same thing still with like Mech Warrior or Dark Age. We just get a huge box of random shite that nobody wants anymore and play for cheap. I have this huge box. I think I paid like $30 for it. It had like 50 mechs and a whole bunch of tanks in it. And I'm sure if you wanted to play Mech Warrior or Dark Age, they were garbage because that's the reason they were in a box for $30. But if you just needed random robots and tanks, it was perfect. So go out, get like a big box of random stuff. And that's an excellent way of just getting some miniatures going. And a lot of times it'll be stuff that is you might be surprised. You might find like some really cool stuff. You get a big box like plastic D&D minis. There'll be some like cool character models you've never seen before. So that's my first advice is like don't overlook just like eBay. Sometimes if you have like a local store, you can there'll be a swap meet or like a convention or a tournament or something. But just swing on eBay and see what people are selling. And just especially if you're not like locked into a specific thing, you're just looking for some sci-fi minis. Like odds are you'll find like Warhammer stuff, but that's fine. That's a good place to start. The other thing you can find is, and assuming you're not like too allergic to like cheap plastic crap from China, but I've noticed on like Amazon and stuff, and even on like some of those like Temu and AliExpress sites that like definitely don't steal your credit card information. There are tons of like, I think they're being sold for like D&D players because there are tons of like sets of like plastic figures, like kind of cheap, but they're not like badly detailed. And you can get like piles of like knights and orcs and heroes and stuff that kind of like knock off. If you go to one of those sites to search like RPG minis or D&D minis, you'll find like piles of that stuff, and they're really quite affordable. So if you're doing like fantasy skirmish gaming, or a certain game about being 5 leagues from somewhere, you could probably get like a decent pile from that. Which also leads into, this is like official advice for like 5 Parsecs Bug Hunt, but like go to your like dollar store or like toy store and look for those like tubs or buckets or whatever they always have with like plastic bugs or lizards or frogs or insects or anything like that. You can pay like a couple of dollars and get like a huge pile of. Finally, you'll be able to have enough for a game of Bug Hunt with all the blip spawns. But like a lot of the very first like version of Bug Hunt was play tested using these plastic frogs. They were like the least threatening thing, but I paid like $3 for like a box of like 50 of them, and they were like brightly colored. They were very nice little frog models. Actually, they look very realistic. But they look a little threatening compared to like a 15mm guy because it's like a giant frog now. But they weren't, they were cheap. So that's
giant frogs would horrify me, honestly. That would be.
I feel scary. Like a giant, bright, like red frog coming rolling down a corridor would probably worry me a lot. But like conceptually, they do have those tongues that can like shoot out. That would be like horrifying.
Oh yeah, and then you get eaten. So that's it.
Yeah, that sounds like a bad deal. So now if you're looking for actual minis, you don't want somebody's secondhand shite, and you don't want like plastic toys or Chinese stuff after they stole your credit card. The two like obvious solutions, the first is like 1/72 scale plastic, right? Which a lot of people have like love-hate relationships with because like some of the figures aren't real good and the rifles will not point in the same direction. They all have that like World War II thing where they can shoot around corners. However, for like what, I don't know what they cost up there, like what, $10 for like a box of 50 guys, something like that, $12 these days. Like you can get, if you're doing like historical, like World War II skirmish or something, buy a couple of boxes of those and you are good to go. You can find. I just bought a pile of 3D printed like World War 20mm tanks for like $10 each, and they were not like model. They were not as good as if you had bought like Battlefront models. But I can't get a Battlefront tank for $10, and they were larger scale. The downside with 172s, other than being a little shit, is like fantasy and sci-fi is like really hard to do because there's just not very much of it. There are some like fantasy sets out there, but
they got a lot of not Lord of the Rings. I've seen.
Yeah, and I think they're all
if
like,
it's still in production.
Eastern Europe. Yeah. Some of them you see, and like they were made like 10 years ago, and they've just been selling them ever since, but they aren't making anymore.
Yeah, so about Airfix quality.
Yeah, so they're not amazing, but you paid $12 for 50 guys. Some of them can be pretty good. I had some World War II Germans in plastic that were actually like they looked like real miniatures. Like the poses were great, very dynamic. The detail was really sharp, but those are like a little less common. Usually they're like a certain jank quality. They can still paint up pretty much. But if you're looking at getting started on like playing, I don't know, like Chain of Command or one of those games, 2 boxes of those will give you like everything you need to start playing. Like not just like play some games, but like play an actual real game, because you get like 30 plus guys. For metal, obviously like 15mm is like the long time answer. Like the sci-fi, we've talked about sci-fi in 15 before, where you can get like nowadays it's inching closer to like $6-7 per bag of like 8 figures, I feel, but you're still paying $1 or less per figure. So if you're trying to build like 30 guys and a couple of tanks, you might be pushing. I used to say you could play like a mechanized platoon in 15mm for $50. Maybe that's not true anymore, but you're not that much over. You certainly could do it under. And those are like real miniatures. Like they're sharp, they're crisp, or as sharp and crisp as that particular manufacturer is. It varies, but like they're real stuff. They don't have that like jank quality that like 172s can. So, and like for historical stuff, obviously 50mm has always been like one of the main ones. So if you want to play like World War II platoon level, or you want to play like anything, 15 is a good way to go. And there's a lot of people, you can do the thing where, a lot of people do like bolt action or stuff like that in 50. I was going to say a lot of people do Flames of War in 15mm, but there's probably a reason they do.
Adds up.
Yeah. And if you want to buy more dudes, you can do the thing where people take, like, instead of having 10 guys, 1 on each base, they'll put like 2 or 3 on each base. So you don't save anything then, but it does look cool. So your squad is now like 30 guys or whatever. But you still play them like they're 10 guys in the game. So that's kind of like as far as like cheap armies is like from one end of jankness is like toys, and you go to 172 figures, which are real figures, but they're a little jank, and then you go to like the 15s. And I feel like that's the point. We talked about this when we did the 15 episode, but that's the point where like doing 6mm skirmish, there's a lot of like compromise and things you have to kind of like be okay with. That isn't the case in 15. So 15 doesn't feel, to me at least, as a like sacrifice. It's like a legitimate choice people make, going like 6mm in doing skirmish games. Now you have to like look at those little fuckers and figure out which one is the guy with the pistol.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a guy where it painted the blue eyes instead of the brown eyes.
I just wanted to shout out a couple people while we take a little pause for hydration. Very important, first of all. Shout out hydration. Hello to Mini Warmutt, working on his 5P crew, which is pretty great. You're going to get a game going very soon. Promises, which is terrific. And also to Gamers with Coffee. Hello, Greg. Good to see you. And Mini Warmutt shared the live feed to his Facebook group, which is very kind. Thank you so much.
Couldn't do it without you.
Yeah. And then lastly, the chat just said it would fail to load. So I am going to hop onto my phone.
Oh, yeah.
Somewhere, I think.
I'm not nobody's said anything since then.
Yeah. Actually, I can go here and pop up my chat.
While you're, I was going to say the last option, this is like the nuclear option for being cheap, is like paper or cardboard, right? Either like paper minis, which I feel like they've always been out there and people like always overlook them. But you can get, paper stuff you can print out. I told the story before, I think, but there was a guy I used to play Crossfire with. He would print out like photos of. He would scale down and print out photos of like World War II tanks and soldiers, and he would then glue it to like cardboard and laminate it. And he had this huge box with just armies, and it was all like tanks, and they were all in the correct base sizes for Crossfire. And he just had this huge box of armies that cost like basically nothing other than like some laminating sheets, and they were like really durable. You could just like put them down. It kind of felt like playing a board game more. But you know, you knew what you were looking at. You don't have to do the thing where you're trying to guess what model this tank is because it's literally a photo of the actual tank.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're bad at tank recognition like I am, it doesn't help you. But you know, you don't have the. So that's like the ultimate like cheap line. But I feel like that's the point where it's like you're again like making decisions that's more decision making. You have to kind of like make up for stuff, right? Because you don't have like a 3D model. The other options are, and I know they're not like revelations, but sometimes it's helpful, especially for newer people, to like hear these things out. Maybe
if you tie it all together too, so you have your paper miniatures and paper terrain, and it's all set up in a big paper landscape, then I think it looks all pretty good together. But you mix and match.
Yeah, you get like
you got some like regular miniatures, some paper, some janky terrain. You know, just try to theme it, and then you should be good.
Yeah, or you could even do. I wonder if you did like, because a lot of people you can get like paper buildings and stuff, and they often look quite nice. So some people will do, you know, miniatures, but then they'll get like paper terrain. I guess we'll come to that in a second. We'll talk about terrain. But yeah, and honestly, again, like the other, like the obvious question, I suppose, is like the size of games. Obviously, like avoid like the rank and flanks. You can. The thing is, like stand-based games can always be done cheaper. Like I started playing Command Decision with like a 115mm guy on each stand. You're supposed to use like 3, I think, but it didn't make a difference because the number of figures on the base didn't make any difference, right? So you know, there's always options like that. Obviously, like doing like warband type games are pretty cheap. Platoon level, like World War II, is, you know, there's a reason that's popular other than that it's the best gaming you can do, which is like you can play a real game. You only need like 30 guys. So even if you're doing it in like 28mm, like how much does 30 guys cost from like Warlord? Like not that much. You know, I think the boxes from Wargaming Landing I bought, I forget what I paid for them, but they had 30 dudes in them. They were not that expensive.
Yeah.
So if you're kind of gearing,
maybe like under $1 miniature for most of them.
Yeah, I want to say I paid $25, but I don't remember if I got them on sale or not. But again, that's kind of my point. There is if you sit down to play like Bolt Action or Chain of Command, if you have your box of like 30 plastic dudes or 50 plastic dudes and 172, you're not playing like a cut down game. You're playing like the actual real game. Like that's real wargaming. I guess that's kind of my point. That you don't have to. You could be cheapskate without like not playing real wargaming. So a couple of folks, do you want to pop up a couple of the?
Yeah, I've been bringing them up as we go along.
Yeah.
Don is commenting about how great 15mm is to scale for painting and cost, but often struggles moving single base 15mm infantry on a small skirmish board.
Small figures can be a little bit of an issue with that. One thing I found is that I've always based mine on pennies, but I end up basing them on like slightly thicker, like acrylic bases. They're like, I don't know if they're double the thickness of a penny, but they're like a little thicker, and that made them like way easier and nicer to pick up. And they also have kind of like a nice heft to it. I think they're just from Litco, but yeah, consider like mucking around with the bases you do when you're using 15s individually. The comments on the terrain and space saving are really on point because like a box of terrain for 15mm, you can have like a ton of shit that is harder in the big scales. The same if you want to play like tank heavy games, like a whole bunch of like graph tanks sitting all over the table, like it will just eat up space like crazy in 28. So, and being cheapskate, I suppose, is also about playing in small space. Not necessarily.
Exactly. And yeah, cheapskate storage. I mean, the storage costs money. That's for sure.
That is true. At this point, if you're cheap enough, like your storage bin will cost more than the army you're storing in it.
That's right.
So,
Lutanto says he doesn't have the patience to paint anything bigger than 15mm, and then
that's the other
Noise
thing.
calls him out right here on the chat.
Ooh.
Does he have the balls to paint single base 6mm men's like Michael Stockin?
I was gonna say I know exactly the dude who did that. He didn't fuck around. He straight up did
Yeah.
6mm skirmish. I don't know if he does anymore. I know he got big into fantasy gaming. For a while, he was doing like tons of like sci-fi stuff with little personalities. I've always wanted to do. I keep putting it off because I don't want another project. But I always wanted to do 6mm skirmish just to say I did it.
Yeah.
Because it's so cool.
It'll be a challenge someday. The 6mm skirmish challenge. Noise is back from dinner and he's spitting hot fire. Must eat something spicy.
I've done some 12mm Victrix figures. They're plastic World War II figures on single bases. They are lovely. They're awesome. Mm-hmm. So, Warmutt's drop zone 10 is his limit. Yeah. So the thing with the 6mm is that they're obviously like people who are skirmish gaming with them are kind of like not doing it right because they're meant to like put a bunch of dudes on each stand, right? But telling a gamer they should do something will 100% make them want to do it. So, but yeah, I guess none of these are like huge, like mind shattering insights, especially to our crowd who are mostly just here to like hang out and listen. But you know, I think it's important to, and I guess if I'm being like, I don't know, like hopeful, is I've said before, like I think there's a lot of people out there who are interested in miniatures gaming and would be interested, but they don't engage with it because they think X, and X is often I have to spend $1,000 building a Warhammer. So I think popularizing some of these ideas that like, no, you don't have to build a huge army, you don't have to paint 200 guys, and you definitely don't have to spend $500 on it. Like you can have a real war game for $50 or whatever, $75. What what I mean? Like, and get that idea out there that you can get. Like, the RPG folks have no problems, I didn't mention rules here because you can literally just go find, like, some game online. A lot of games will have, like, demo versions or even, like, full rule books you can get for free without pirating anything. And there's, people putting out games for free as well.
A few people,
yeah. If you're interested in some Weasel gaming, 5 Minute Normandy is still available. And that's a pay what you want. So you can check it out. And if you like it, you can go back for those couple of bucks in. But honestly, I don't mention the rule book because it almost like doesn't matter. You're going to spend more on the army. So it doesn't like if you're looking at, let's say you want to spend $100 on this project, which is fine. Doesn't matter if your rule book is then like $15 or $20. Like probably not. That's not the big part of it. You probably don't want to spend like $60 on a rule book if it's $100 army, but whatever.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's kind of my vibe on it is you can definitely. Which moves us to obviously your dudes have to stand on something. So the second part of being cheap is cheap terrain. Now, I always forget, you've done a little terrain building, right?
I hate it.
All right, that's fair.
I like having terrain, but I don't like having to deal with moving or painting or storing the terrain. And I love my LGS because they have all the terrain, and I just like going there.
Yeah. So if you have a club or gaming store, you can just like not do terrain. But if you have to do some terrain, there are some ways to do it a little cheaper. So obviously, if you're looking at still buying stuff, well, I guess we'll start with the more jank options. Do you want to show the picture of the jank foam ruins that I got?
Heck yeah.
So this is like here. Now they're not done, so don't all like start pissing yourself. But this is like an example. This is like straight out of an old like White Dwarf too, so like from the old days. But it's basically just foam board, and then you cut it out in like rectangles and like zigzag cut from corner to corner. So now you have two roughly triangle shaped pieces, and then you back them up against each other on a base and use Elmer's glue, and you'll have ruins. Now, if you put a bunch of work in, this is like literally just put together and spray. So you obviously want to like paint them, and you can make them look really nice. You want to like rough them up. Right now, they kind of look like 90s like video game ruins, right?
Yeah.
Although if you want that vibe, paint all you dudes like glossy color, put gloss varnish on them, and have like 90s like Quake battle.
Yeah. It worked for the Tesla truck, right? It just looks like something straight out of the 90s video game.
Yeah. It looks like they didn't finish rendering. So, but yeah, like these foam board is like you can get a huge board at like a craft store for a couple of bucks. You can churn out like an entire table full of these things in like a couple of hours. And yeah, they'll look a little jank, but that's the thing. You can get them on the table and you can play games pretty quickly. Or you can keep working on, you can add some moss, you can like scuff up the edges, you can add like bits of rubble, and you can, as much energy as you want to put into these, like these could turn into like real nice terrain with skill and time. But if you're being cheap and you don't mind it being a little jank, you can have a whole table of like 3D terrain for basically nothing. Like I think it's like $3, like a huge sheet at the local hobby store here. So that's like the peak cheapness. You can also use like card, but the foam board has a little more sturdiness to it. So if you build it up with like a platform you can put a guy on or something, it'll probably hold up a little better. And you can cut out in like any which size. Like these were just cut out very generically because so I could use them for 20s or 28s or 15s. It doesn't really matter because they're obviously not like quote real places. They're just kind of like they're the idea of a ruin.
Yeah.
So
right.
Along with that, like if you are even less worried about being jank, like get some colored paper and cut out like circles and write forest on them. You know, draw some trees. For some unit-based games, that's almost like because the terrain will be like out of scale anyway. So you could just like take a gray paper square and write city on it. That's the city of Austerlitz or whatever. That might be like too jank, but you know, again, if you're just looking to get started with gaming, you could start there. Just do some paper, then work your way up to some actual terrain, right?
Yeah, the Gale Force 9 tanks games, like the Tanks Modern, and then World of Tanks, always came with flat pack terrain. So like there's a little square, that's a picture of a house. There's round things that are pictures of forests, and they work fine.
You could go out. You could do the laminated thing too. You could go out, like find some photos from aerial photos of like cities or forests and stuff like that, and print those out and laminate them or whatever, and you could use those. Like it would.
And if you're playing like aerial combat, then that's actually perfect. That's exactly what you want.
Oh yeah, exactly. I mean, they would probably even look like one of those military like exercise things, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's not a bad idea. If you scale out a little bit, one thing that is good to find is Chinese like model railroad trees. Now it's probably all made in China anyway, but a lot of times I've noticed, especially for like trees for railroads, are like the easiest thing to find cheap on like dodgy Chinese e-commerce sites. Probably don't like put those trees in your mouth and don't use them to like stir your soup with because you'll die. But news is suggesting Lego. Legos are an excellent option, provided you already got them. If you got to go out and buy them, that shit ain't cheap.
Yeah,
but we built Lego like buildings when we played Epic Space Marine back in the day. So yeah, and you get the fun of building, you know, whatever you want to build. You can build like whole bases and cities.
And of course, the guy Alan from Bricks and Blocks does this 5x6 bat rips in Lego right there. Yeah. And you do like the whole thing in Lego, then it looks great.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. That's again the part where it's like now it's not cheapskate anymore because now it's like effort. Like that dude put some serious work into it.
Yeah. And I will say hello to Creative Projects for Busy People, also a cheapskate gamer. Good to see you.
Awesome. Well, in that case, you're in the right place. My secret weapon is the pet store. This only works with sci-fi and fantasy, but what you do is you go to your pet store. You go to the fish tank section and you go look at all of they're like plastic or resin or something, but like the rock formations that they have, because they will always have like tons of them and they're always cheap. And you get all of these like really awesome, amazing looking rock formations, and they look awesome next to like Space Marines or 50mm guys or whatever. You can again also get that stuff on Amazon for cheap. It's definitely like lead paint and will give you 3 arms and mutated children. But you know. But yeah, you can, and that stuff looks really, if you buy like a bunch of them, it really looks great for like an alien world or something. You have troops like skirmishing through the rocks and stuff. So that will cost you like a little bit because they're usually like, you know, $10-15 per piece. Sometimes you can get lucky, you can get stuff on sale, or I mean, you can also sometimes get stuff like this, like a giant skull with a pirate hat or something that people put in their fish tanks. So you can. Maybe that will fit some tables more than others. It doesn't fit like 1944 Normandy that much. But that's like the secret weapon because those like look really nice because they're meant to look nice. And they're like ready to use. You have to do nothing with them. You could probably touch it up because a lot of times if they have like the plastic fish tank plants on them, they look kind of like very fake. So some people will like paint them up and stuff. But so that's kind of my cheapskate like. obviously you can also just like get like nowadays, like for buildings, I would almost just spend the money, get like an MDF kit or get like something 3D printed. Like I showed off those 3D print buildings I got recently.
Yeah.
Like,
like
the cost of
Amazon,
that.
even for Canada, Amazon is pretty good for getting like the PLA printed terrain for a
Mhm.
reasonable price. Definitely better than fish tank prices.
Yeah, some of that is getting cheaper now, and like you have to look around. Like Etsy has a ton of where people will like 3D print stuff for you, especially if you like sci-fi ruins with giant skulls on them. For an
Yeah.
unnamed Gothic future game. You know, I mean, it's nice to sell official terrain for Roguehammer. I wouldn't have expected that, but you know, that's where we are as a dominant company. Um, but yeah, like buildings, I think are at the point where like I would rather just drop the $50 on it to get an MDF or get it printed than like kit bashing it myself. Like I'm just too fucking lazy for it.
Oh yes.
But like if you want to knock up the foam ruins, they work fine. I think Gamecraft here in the States I don't know if they do anymore. They used to have this range of they were basically foam board. They were kind of like Middle Eastern building houses and compounds. So they all had like flat roofs and stuff, but they were very like suitable for gaming, and they were like dirt cheap for like big buildings. I still have a couple of them. But you can build it yourself too. If you get a bunch of foam board, just cut it out and like look up photos from the Middle East of some of these buildings and kind of compounds and stuff, and they're perfect for gaming. There's no reason that you can't have Saudi Arabia in space.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, look at Star Wars. A lot of that, obviously, because it was filmed in like Tunisia or something. But they had a lot of Middle Eastern vibes, and flat roof buildings are really nice for gaming on, right?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Finally, you can get your dudes over the roof.
Right? One other thing I've done in the past and abandoned, but they're still sitting there waiting for me, is expanding foam hills and things. That's always super easy to do. Where you spray a bunch of expanding foam onto some parchment paper, wait for it to expand, and then bubbles up in weird shapes, and then you just kind of hack it down randomly and fill it in.
Is that one of those things where you're gonna like get cancer breathing in the bits, or is it
no? Expandable foam should be okay. It's for insulation.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So filling up like little spaces. So then you can have,
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, that's really cool. I wonder
so you could add a lot of like height.
Really easy for small scale stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I guess you could just like
blocking terrain.
Yeah, like we back in the day we would try getting like huge blocks of styrofoam and cut that down, and anyone who's cut styrofoam knows that is just an absolute fucking nightmare. Like Mini Wormhut says, trash terrain for the win. Yes.
He has a really good catalog of trash terrain videos if anyone wants to check him out.
Go check that out. Packaging material is like, if you do, because there's people who enjoy the building and kit bashing part. And if you do, packaging material, anything that like your electronics came shipped in, stuff like that, whether it's foam or cardboard, you can just get a gold mine of like cool shapes you can work from. So if you like the building part, so again, the cheapskate is like, for me, it's like positioned between being not wanting to spend money or effort, but if you're willing to spend, you can make up for one with the other, right? If you are fine spending more money, you don't have to spend any effort. If you're fine putting in more work, then you don't have to spend the money. So, and if you get a kick out of building stuff, then absolutely trash terrain. You can build like there's tutorials for like building your own trees and stuff too. I feel like with trees, because you usually want like a bunch, and I would like rather just pay for them. But like I have a little box of trees that I bought 20 years ago, and they've stood me fine for like every single game. Like it has like 30 or so in it, and I will never buy another tree ever again unless it's for my actual yard.
If you take your foam core and you add some clump foliage on top, so you cut out irregular shapes, put on clump foliage, then you have perfect trees for small scale and bushes for big scale.
That is true. Hills will also like scale, like because like any model hill, like go out in real life and like find a hill and look at it. It's huge. Like any actual realistic hill on your tabletop would be like half the table, and instead it's always like this big. So your hills are like already not to scale. So just reuse them, whatever. What I love, the thing that says like Wargaming more than anything else, is those hills that have like the old Games Workshop hills where they have like the almost like a vertical edge to them, so it's like terraces.
Mm-hmm.
Which are like the least realistic thing ever. We did a couple of times where we just folded up like towels and socks and stuff, and then draped a sheet,
Yep.
brown sheet over the table. It looks really nice, but it's like shit for putting minis on.
Oh yeah,
because you'll put a dude like up the hill and he'll just like roll down.
Yeah, just topple over. Just like stairs. I love stairs, but I hate putting miniatures on them.
Yeah. It just doesn't work. So that's the reason. It's funny because like having hills is literally like the most realistic thing. Almost nowhere in the world is completely flat. But nobody puts hills on the table because it just sucks ass, and they're hard to make look good. Mm-hmm. And even like buying some that are ready made, they're not really that cheap. So most people just put more houses and stuff. So
the other thing I want to say about cheapskate gaming would be people often buy board games for the miniatures, like miniatures games, but they often come with the tables. So up earlier was I think it was Don. Yeah, there we go. He mentioned 6mm skirmish might work on a grid. So often you'll be able to find a lot of games that are discontinued now, like say, for example, old Warhammer Underworlds boards are no longer legal in the current tournament. So you have like tons of hex boards that you can repurpose, reuse. They have some terrain built into them already that you can use. Plus, you can add things on the hex board themselves.
I have what was it? The Betrayal at Calth board game. I kept the board tiles to play skirmish games on because they're really cool. And you can do it like with or without the grid. Like I don't know if I have it anymore, but I had a big box of, I think they were like Star Wars RPG board tiles.
Oh yeah.
And we would use them for like Rogue Trader games and 5150 and just like measure without using the grid. So you don't have to use the grid just because it has a grid on, but it can still be a really nice surface. Also a lot, especially for like those old Games Workshop board games, because people just scalp the miniatures, and then like for a while you could get the boards and dice and all that stuff from like what was the Death Watch one? Overkill or something?
Overwatch, I guess.
I don't remember what it was called. It had like a really like rock and roll tone.
Yeah.
But that like Betrayal at Calth ones, like people would just scalp the terrain off. Or the board and dice and stuff. So you could just get a pile of like cool bits. The same for like old, a lot of old D&D like dungeon tiles and mats and stuff can be had because that stuff has been around like forever. People would sell because they've been made back when D&D was also a minis game. When they did the random minis, they would sell packs of tiles and stuff, and they had like mat sheets. Like we played. When I was teaching my friend Ruben to play Warhammer 40K, we played on his like D&D mats because he had ones that were like forest, and we just set up on those and played. But we still like measured. So don't underestimate like rating your board game collection. Plus, I remember like starting out playing Warhammer 40K, and everyone rated their like Space Crusade boxes for Space Marine minis.
Yeah.
So they showed up like everyone's armies. So yeah, absolutely go. And nowadays, like a lot of like board games that show up on Kickstarter, nobody plays them to begin with. So we talked about that. So just get the minis and like go to town with them.
A question for everyone who's listening right now: would you rather play on a table that is bare and you rated your recycling bin basically, so you got like yogurt cups and Pringles cans or whatever,
Coke cans,
and then play your miniatures on those, or would you rather play on a flat like board, like a grid or a board game board or something where the terrain is already built into it? But you're kind of stuck in like one static position. Because I think I'd rather go flat pack overall if I had to choose between the two.
So
depending on the game, of course.
So I'm biased because like let's see what the chat says. I'm biased because the terrain that I use most of the time is like mouse mat terrain, and it's flat to begin with. And it actually made me come around to like flat terrain because you can just like put dudes on it. Like model forests always like a beep to put like dudes in, right? But these are just flat, so you just like move your guys around. It's so clear where everyone is. It's like, so I've kind of come around. I think in my head, I think if you had like, I've always wanted to like use like old BattleTech sheets to like play minis games on because they have like their like BattleTech has all the vibes of a minis game, although there's a lot of like big open spaces, I suppose.
And it's easy enough to convert if you want to, like the Kill Team Darktide board game basically just takes 2 inches for 1 hex. So if you want to play a game of Kill Team on it, you could use any Kill Team miniatures on any hex board, really, and you just say, well, it's
absolutely
2 hexes is 1 inch, so that's
or the answer says if it's good enough for a board game.
That's right.
I mean, but to an extent, the one thing with board game stuff is that the ranges are usually really small. So you either have to play games where that doesn't matter that much, or you have to play games that are. I mean, you can cut everything in half. That works because, like, if you're setting up on like dungeon tiles or like space hulk tiles or something, your weapon with a range of 24 inches is going to be like off the. You're never going to shoot that far, right?
Mhm.
So you can either cut everything in half, or you can just say fuck it and play. Like it's just close combat time. So that's a one limitation when playing on like tiles and board.
Yeah. Let's see. So
Gentleman
yeah, we
on
got
Twitch says I started in third edition. The book started with making on cardboard terrain. Nothing like that anymore. I got me some foam board and MDF baseboards. Yes, foam board is the reason I'm partial to foam board is it's just like easy to work with. So even if you have like no skill at all, because it's easy to work with and it's really cheap. So if you F it up, it doesn't really matter. So it's like the perfect, like if I was telling somebody's kid how to get started building, I would tell them to buy a bunch of foam board and like Elmo's glue. The worst is they'll like eat the glue. They do that in school anyway, right?
That's right.
I guess nowadays they look like on TikTok and see somebody eating glue on TikTok, which is safer, except for the influencer, I guess.
Yeah, creative products for busy people is saying they keep your eye out on board games at the charity shops. Of course, I got Transformers Risk for $5 and a lot of robots and tanks. I've taken those. Good. Yeah, I have some of those too. I bought them on eBay because they were going pretty cheap. Yeah, they're really nice.
I've seen people do the traditional Risk minis and use them to build like Napoleonic armies. Because if it's a traditional Risk set, you get like little dudes in shakos and little horses and cannon. You can build like a whole Napoleonic army out of them. I've wanted to do that. I think somebody said a while ago that for some of you could get like replacement or spare parts for some board games.
Yeah, there's a website where you can buy it.
Yeah, so you might be able to get like piles of like Risk dudes for cheap, but obviously it depends on like if it's still in production. But yeah,
I got some Buck Rogers like laser cannon turrets, like on like a round dome, and they have like a little laser cannon on top from that site. They're pretty cool.
Oh, that's awesome. Don says, I'd rather play on a board game style board than an overly abstract terrain table. Yeah, I think I'm inclined to agree with that. I don't know. Like sometimes I don't mind really abstract, but there is like a visual to it. Noose says, I like tables that are really cluttered, so I prefer a bare table I can put items on. So that's the downside of you don't really get the 3D. So there's no climbing up on things. There's no like high ground, which I mean, a lot of wargame tables are like pretty 2D. Although I will say some people won't like the way this looks, but you can combine like 3D and flat stuff. You could have, like if let's say you have a bunch of like space hulk tiles and then you put like containers and barrels and stuff on those, you could kind of have like best of both worlds. Some people will not like how that looks, but I think like that's like a good middle ground if you're trying to get like the most of it. Or I've seen people do where they have like they'll have a normal like 40K looking table, and then they'll have like an area that's supposed to be like an underground bunker, and they lay that out with like space hulk tiles.
Yeah.
So you like move up to it, and then you move on to else. So like, honestly, yeah, this is fun.
That is terrain and functional. Yeah.
Now people are like, everyone has like different like what they like.
Yeah.
Which kind of goes to show like once you start thinking about it a little bit, there's like so much you can do with this.
Yeah. For quick games, like just getting rid of the tape measure and just counting squares is often pretty fast. So, yeah, for what Mini Warmutt says, I can agree with that too.
Yeah, and some people if you're playing with like that one asshole who gets like really intense
about
whether you were 0.1 inch off, like obviously a grid like gets rid of that. And it's usually pretty easy to convert minis games to grids. You just have to like make a little bit of adjustment, The only reason I prefer measuring when playing on a board is that I like being able to place figures in like at the edge of doors or stuff like that, which you can't usually do on the grid. But there's nothing wrong with playing on just using the grid. Like Warmud says, sometimes it's easy to say, okay, yeah, you're 4 squares away. Like there's no like questions. There's no. I do wish. I know they're all scaled for 28mm, but I do wish there were board game tiles or dungeon tiles or something that was scaled to like 3/4 of that, so you would have more spaces in each room or in each corridor, right? Like it always pisses me off when there's a corridor is 1 space wide.
Yeah.
Because then you can't like it's stupid. But if it was 2 spaces wide, then you make all the rooms a little wider. That would make them just more interesting, more fun to play on. But again, that's small. I think also like if you're like playing, I don't know, like the inside, like it's a commando raid and you're blowing up the evil plasma cannon generator. Like you're like the whole game is going to be about like dudes with like pistols and flamethrowers and swords or whatever, right? So
yeah.
It doesn't, it's just a different experience. A lot of when I ran Inquisitor for my wife, we used those Star Wars styles a lot for all the interiors. There's a lot of TIE fighters in hangars in Warhammer 40K, as it turns out. So
the other,
the other empire. There was this mad website I saw like years ago, which had like the idea was that like all of the evil empires from every like space thing was like the same empire but different places.
Oh yeah.
so like the 40K empire and like the Star Wars empire and like whatever, they were all like part of the same thing. It's like the coalition of evil, I guess.
Yeah, I always thought about that with Gundam too. It's like, what if it was all just Earth Federation across the board?
Oh yeah,
some good, some bad. All these little guys are struggling. Yeah, it's fun to think about for sure.
There was another. This is like super off topic, so I'll just get this off my chest before I go mad. But there's this project I've wanted to do. You take like all the fantasy like RPG worlds, and you put them. Say that they're all in the same world, they're just different continents. You can travel between them, but each continent is ruled by its own gods. That's why like magic is different. So like all the races and all the games exist in the same world. They could technically go to each other. They just like live really far apart. So you could play like a dude from Dark Zone and go to Warhammer or something.
Oh yeah.
So that would be really bad. And also a great way of getting sued.
Yeah.
100%. Ludanzo says flat terrain on the bare table. So he's kind of on the move, guys, between tight terrain about smashing everything. This is absolutely true, yes. So, but again, it's
most people agree.
Yeah, I mean, it's the thing of like it's like practicality versus aesthetics, right? Like sometimes the less practical table is more visually pleasing and vice versa. So you'll kind of know where you're. But it's also good to be able to like dial it up and down a little bit. Like I realized I love my like mousepad terrain, but lately I've really wanted to also have some like proper ruins for like World War II skirmish. So for that project, but for like sci-fi, I'm pretty happy with just the mousepad stuff. So
I got 3 constants in my wargaming. The first constant is I will always knock over a piece of terrain. I will always knock over a guy with a spear, and I always drop my dice on the floor, like every single game, forever.
Or poke your hand on the spear.
Yeah,
like those old
I don't mind that so much.
Warhammer goblins is like a fucking spike trap when you put your hand down.
It is amazing how sharp those are.
Yeah, you wouldn't think of it like a tiny little piece of plastic. But I guess that since we've been talking about like building and crafting, I guess that kind of transitions us to the last part, which is painting on the cheap. So how do you paint as a cheapskate?
I've been thinking about it, brainstorming, and it is too deep.
Yourself to be cheap.
Yeah, that's right. It's too deep to go into in this one podcast.
Yeah.
But I decided to kind of narrow it down to videos I've done in the past. And why I did them, because they were cheap, just show people how easy it is to get into wargaming. But before I talk about that, I want to start with saying that you probably shouldn't if you're just starting out. Don't go cheap. Right. Just buy the stuff that's meant to go with the products so that you have a base idea of how things should be. Otherwise, you're just kind of guessing, like, am I doing it right? This doesn't seem to work. If you have the proper product, then at least you can reference what other people are doing and see where you went wrong.
Well, so there's also, because if you go like, if you're like, I know like craft store paints is like a big thing. Some people will advocate for those. You can do amazing things with them. However, it can be very difficult if you're then going on a forum and you're asking like, how do I get my like flesh tier or space marines, but you don't have the colors that anyone knows. Like people can tell you like, oh, try this army painter or this Scape Sorcerer or this Vallejo, but they can't recommend like the apple barrel like color for you,
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, that's where it gets tough, is starting out. I would say don't try to cheap out too much in the beginning, except for some of these things.
All right. So
the first one is blue tack for miniatures. It's my biggest video. It's my oldest video. It's got a lot of views. And it is the simple concept of taking your blue tack, squishing it in your hands until it's very warm, putting on a bottle or something. So I will use an old paint pot like this. But you could use a pill bottle or anything that has a bit of weight that you can hold on to, and then stick your miniature on there. Kind of wiggle a little bit, and then it stays. You can paint the miniature. Because a lot of people, especially when they're starting out, don't think about that they will get a lot of shakes while they're painting.
Yes.
If you're trying to hold something tiny and concentrate, you'll get the shakes. It's going to make a bad experience.
Yeah.
So blue tack is usually super cheap. Even if you bought it from an office supply place where it's got to be the most expensive, it's still not going to cost you that much.
Yeah.
Not all blue tack is the same. Some is super sticky. Like it'll get into the crevices. It'll be hard to get out. Others are, not as sticky.
You want like a medium stick.
Yeah. The worse it is at putting something on the wall, probably the better it is for the miniatures. Because you don't want it pulling off all your hard work.
Oh, yeah. Or it's just stuck there, and now your mini is like can't move from the table without considerable effort. I've seen people also put them on like cork, corks that go in wine bottles, but they're kind of like short. So I think the pill bottle is like better.
Yeah, anything that works for your hand. Everyone's got different sizes of hands. I got the big hands. I like the big GW bases like this. This is more expensive. I don't know, $15 maybe when I bought it, which is kind of crazy. But it's handy.
I mean, you could kind of do like whatever you have lying around. Like the point is just something you can grab onto and hold.
You got something in your hand right now. There you go.
Yeah, you can probably
stick it on top. Good to go.
Stick a dude up. I have a 15 millimeter guy here.
That's maybe so easy.
Yeah. Don't paint this guy because this is like a pirated knockoff Russian. I guess they like ripped off a bunch of Ground Zero Games figures and then
added shoulder pads
on them. Yeah. I didn't know when I ordered them because they were like, I don't know, $5 for like a bag of 100, and then it turned out there was a reason for that. So I was like, well, I don't want to throw them out now, but so I used them with the kids to like teach them to paint.
Yeah, it's too late.
So yeah.
Other uses for blue tack would be camo striping. So cheapskate way to use blue tack for camo striping on vehicles is to make it into strips. Put it across the vehicle. You kind of pat it down a little bit so it sticks on there. And then if you have an airbrush, you airbrush it. If you have a rattle can, you can rattle can it. You probably could paint it too if you really wanted to. Might be a little more difficult, but I bet you could get some dry brushing, get some very soft camo that way. And I assume most people who are looking at the video were probably thinking that to begin with.
Yeah.
They didn't know that I was giving them the secret sauce for painting miniatures the other way.
News is saying his painting handle is a wine bottle cork and Uhu poster tack, which I think is the same stuff basically.
Should be.
Yeah, it's like this little gummy thing that you used to put up posters with. Everyone had it in their dorm room or first apartment. Or plastic soda lids glued together. Paint them and boom, sci-fi cargo crates. That is really good, actually. Or you could probably do two of them like bottom to bottom and turn them into like barrels or something.
Yeah,
we use all of our soda caps are used for like cat toys because Lawrence likes to pick them up and carry them around. So sometimes when my wife is like drinking a bottle of Coca-Cola, he will like sit and wait for her to throw the can.
I always had a hard time with soda cans, like in this suggestion, spray painted soda cans. I find they always chip. Like if you're trying to like make a Quonset, so you cut a can in half. I find it always the paint comes off. I don't know why.
Yeah, they also dent real easy, so they're kind of they don't like handle well.
Let's see.
Oh, so Warm-Up says soup cans. I've never tried that, but I think if you like prime them first with like not like normal minis prime, but like some of that like cereal like Krylon primer or something that you
maybe
use
enamels
for, like, furniture. Yeah, well, some of that stuff you can get for like spray painting like furniture and outdoor projects. I think that would probably stick to a soup can just fine. Just take the paper off first, and like plastic dishes. Yeah, and they would look like like silos or something. So. And you can build little like walkways between them, especially if you did them for like. I mean, I guess it'll work for 28, but they would look really good for like small scales.
Yeah, I love these because I put my miniatures in them. But I know that if you flip them upside down, they do look like little bunkers or barracks or something.
Oh yeah. You could just put a little radar dish on top and paint a door, and you're pretty good to go.
Yeah. Then,
now here's my question to you: if somebody is like starting out painting, there's always the question of like, what do you get for like your first paints? Like how many paints should I go out and buy if I want to start painting mini?
It's always a tough call because you have to think about your project. There's no real catch-all unless you'd say, I only want to paint historical minis. Then typically you can't really use the craft paints in that aspect unless you're willing to start mixing colors.
Yeah, because you got to have like grays and browns.
Yeah, and craft paints are always very bright. So if you're doing like sci-fi or fantasy, craft paints are not so bad. Artist acrylics as well typically aren't as military based. So
or if you're trying to paint up like your Chaos Space Marines or something.
Yeah, and if you wanted to be guaranteed to have a good time just starting out, you might as well just pick up like a pack of Vallejo's military colors if you want to do military, or any of the starter packs. Citadel is the tough one, and I'm going to come to that. I'll skip it to it now.
I was gonna ask, because I bought when I was restocking my paints because all of the Games Workshop ones fucking died. Fuck you, GW. Your paint pots suck ass. So I bought Army Painter because I wanted to try them, and at the time I was kind of into the idea of just getting all my shit from one place.
Yeah.
Now I lucked out because this was before they changed the formula, but I lucked out like all of them were like good. Like I never had the consistency issues. But what I didn't notice was because I bought like the starter set and the starter like wash set. That was like a good base, and then I added individuals to it. I did notice for the Army Painter ones, they are definitely geared towards like fantasy and sci-fi because you get a bunch of like kind of bright, strong colors that are very much suited for like D&D minis and Space Marines. They were not. If I was going to do them just for historicals, I would probably still buy some, but I don't think I would buy like the starter set there. I would probably get one of the like Vallejo, or they have some like, North Deutsche Afrika Core sets or whatever. Like get something like that. But if you're starting with like fantasy minis or something, which is, I think, despite the name, I think they're like as much marketed like RPG dudes and stuff. So, so the type of starter set you get and who you get it from, I think, will determine some of the value. But the wash set is like fantastic.
Now, let's say you want to be a cheapskate and you still want products that are meant for miniatures. If you have a scene around, there's definitely someone who's getting out or someone who has too much paint. So typically you could ask around or just keep your eye on the local buy and sell for miniature stuff. Someone's just dumping their lot. Chances are it's going to be Citadel paints. And they do expire. Unlike the rest of them, they're going to expire. So
But still,
what you want to do at that point is you need a couple things. You need to get some dropper bottles. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Don't believe them. Dropper bottles are what you need, okay?
Yeah.
And you can buy those cheap off of Amazon, AliExpress. They'll come from the same places, like little Chinese bottles.
Yeah.
And you need an agitator because you need to be able to mix those paints. Citadel paints are very thick. They've only been drying up this whole time, so they're only getting thicker. Agitator-wise, you could go steel, but you don't know if it's going to rust or not. And that's the big challenge there. Though they do typically have the best action. But if you want to get something cheap and reliable, you look up like lava beads. Because lava beads have a pretty nice density to them. And you can buy them also on AliExpress. I typically buy them for there's 30 or 40 for 86 cents shipped.
So it's like ridiculously cheap. Literally nothing.
Yeah. And then you want to get something like a medium at the end. You can just use water, like a distilled water, to thin out the paints that have now thickened up. But you typically want to make it a little thicker, you could say, with a medium. Because just the thing the paints with water can make them a bit runny. So to cheap out in that aspect, you either are looking at going to a craft store and getting, say, a matte medium or a matte varnish, whatever one looks cheapest. As long as it's like a liquid and milled for acrylics, then you're okay. Or you can get something like an acrylic floor polish, which is usually gloss. Yeah. So one way you end up with a little bit more matte of a paint, a little more water of a paint. So you can do like a 50-50 mix roughly between the two, just to add a little more bite back into the paint itself for adhesion. Otherwise, it's going to be a bit too thin to work with just water.
Oh, yeah.
So you want to get like a nice flow. If you know what to look for paints already, then you will find that consistency you like. Otherwise, you're kind of aiming for what would be the best consistency? Like a syrup, I guess. Like a light syrup. Like a maple syrup. Like maple syrup's not too thick. It's a little bit runny.
Yeah, it should also taste like maple syrup. It's important to touch your paints.
And then you're stuck with the thought of how am I going to get the Citadel paint now that I've thinned into this dropper bottle with this tiny little hole? But all you got to do is pop off the cap and you pour it in. You don't need a funnel. You don't need anything like that. You don't need a whole kit. I know maybe everyone has different levels of shake or action. Maybe you need to practice a little bit, but it's not that bad. I've done it with all my paints. I never used a funnel. Yeah. So that's probably the best cheapskate way to do it.
A trick I found when painting to reduce the shake, and probably worse, is to try and touch your hands together somehow.
Yeah.
So exactly. It's hard to show because but if you can just touch a finger to your other hand or something, it will just help stabilize you.
Yeah. So same with pouring, bracing, and just being careful as you pour.
Yeah.
Because it'll be thick enough that it's not going to get too runny. So it'll kind of, but it can't be too thick. Otherwise, it's going to gloop and kind of splodge on you. So.
And if you're buying a lot of, or getting a lot of random old paint, a friend of mine sent me a whole bunch of old bottles that he had, and it was 2/3 of them were perfectly fine, and a third of them were just like dead. But it was just like a big box of stuff, so you kind of take your chances on it.
And Mini Warm Up brings up the point. They are also top heavy, those Citadel paints. So not only are they going to dry out your paints, but they're probably going to fall over.
Yeah, the worst ones were when they did the this was like, I don't know, back when they did the screw caps. Those were dreadful because they always like gunked up. Like I had a bunch of them that like were impossible to open, and then if you could force them open, they had just died inside. They were like the worst.
I remember that. Got to grab your teeth.
Yeah. Everyone had a couple of pots that had like bite marks in the plastic screw cap. However, those bottles, yeah, you could definitely avoid all of that shit by just buying some fucking paint or something else, the Vallejo.
But if you're being a cheapskate and you do find that lot, because sometimes you can get the paints, like a lot of them, for a good price, then you put a little work and a little forethought into it. You could get, Citadel paints are still good. They're still good paints to work with.
Yeah.
Just, you have to think about them a little more.
Yeah. Also, like, I guess just for starting out, like, because a lot of people, I think, are hesitant about, like, mixing up, like, paints and stuff. But, like, honestly, unless you're only doing one very specific thing, you probably want, like, stuff from, like I said, if you paint historicals or things that look like historical minis, like there's a lot of, I don't know, like a lot of Imperial Guard armies. You could benefit from a lot of Vallejo stuff because they just have way more options, those kind of like realistic shades. If you're doing more fantasy and like bright space opera stuff, Games Workshop and Army Painter, So don't like feel you have to be locked into a specific type of paint or something. Like I am one of those dudes who like never mix up paints. I just use them out of the pot with a bit of water. So I couldn't speak to like if you can mix that shit together, but I'm sure you can.
F's in chat. F's in chat. Legato.
Oh no.
Everyone spilled like half a pot of contrast paint. I even knew better. I'm like, I just want to try it out before I transfer it. And I spilled it. Like spilled half a bottle.
That's like $12 gone right there.
I know.
That shit is expensive.
Yeah. So I want to go on to the next concept, which involves the things you've bought now. So you got your medium. And you have your bottles, the little dropper bottles. You have your agitators. Now you have a tool that you can use. You can start making your own washes or heavy body washes, which is basically contrast paints. What you'll need now is some acrylic ink. So when you have acrylic ink, you have a very pigment-rich substance that's super thin. So you can easily airbrush with it. You can... Yeah, but mostly you'll be using it to augment or to make a wash or the heavy body wash. So say you got matte medium, let's say, and you got distilled water. You're looking about 50% ink, roughly, to 50% medium. So it'll be the distilled water, be a matte medium, and typically at that point you want to pick up a flow improver as well. So you're starting to add a little more cost into it. But all these kind of hobby materials start like adding up, so you have more and more potential to use them for different projects. So now your cost is going up, but also your potential to do more cheap things is going up. So the one bottle of flow improver you bought will be good for quite a few different applications.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of the thing too, where you have to kind of gauge like, do I spend a little bit of time and effort and money here, and then it opens up like a bunch of things, or are you not interested in doing all that and just buy like a pack of washes or something, and also like, are you after, because sometimes you can make something that you can't really buy. Like a lot of people will make like a really specific wash or something that you can't quite get like the right shade for.
Yeah. Let's say you did buy like a starter set, or you got the Citadel washes in like, that lot you picked up for cheap. Eventually you'll run out of those. So when you start having the inks, you can start making your own. And at that point, you know what to look for. If you mix that wash or the ink or the heavy body wash contrast paint and you apply it, if it's right or if it's wrong, because now you have that experience.
No,
so that's why it's usually better start with the official and then work your way into the cheap in this aspect.
Yeah, because then you have an idea of kind of what. Plus, like when you've tried out the official stuff, you kind of know like those dudes have gone through all the work that you would otherwise have to do on your own. So you get kind of a shortcut, like, okay, this is what a wash should look like. Or at least ideally looks like. You might come up with something that is absolutely not a wash, but it somehow makes a cool effect on your miniatures.
Yeah, and a lot of craft paints will be good for certain applications. Like a black is always pretty good to use. You need to thin it down, and that's when if you have your mediums to mix into it, then you create a good binder for the pigments, which are usually pretty weak, And then you could either work with it as is, and you're going to do like a bunch of multiple thin coats, or you can use that ink now to reinforce the pigments again. So you take your base of like a heavy craft paint, you add some ink into it, you enrich the pigments, and you thin it down to the consistency you want, and then you start painting. Like these guys here are 100% craft paints augmented with ink and thinned with mediums. So they look just like a regular miniatures paint. Because I have the experience now to know what I like. Yeah, and I know how I can start playing around by using cheap things that I have on hand to create my own.
But if you were just starting out, you wouldn't necessarily have.
Yeah, exactly. So that's where it gets tough. So, but if you start building up the supplies ahead of time, you think about it. If I'm going to get the citadels, I'm going to build.
Yeah, for sure.
You work your way up to being cheap. You have to earn your cheap. You can't just start off cheap to begin with.
Yeah. Well, again, it's like it's like the sliding scale of like cost versus effort. What are you willing to? How much are you willing to put in, and what's your Because like for something like paints, I am 100% in the like I just want it in a pack in a store, so I can go home and put it on the table. Like I don't want to mess with that at all. But for some people, again, if you're like after you have the perfect idea of a mini in your head and it needs to look in a very certain way, maybe the stuff at the store will just not get you there because or you need like a certain effect, or you just like experiment. I mean, a lot of it is if you're heavy into the painting aspect, that's like its own hobby, right?
Yeah, exactly. So. And of course, it helps if you're not colorblind. All this, like if you're colorblind, just stick with the official products.
Yeah, it'll be.
Unfortunately, that for you, if you want to achieve a certain effect that other people can see and you cannot, the only way to do that is just to do something that's pretty.
Yeah, and at least you have the names to go by. Because again, if you go online and look up like how people have done certain thing, they're gonna tell you like the Army Painter or the Vallejo or the Games Workshop like paint names, right? And you can even get like conversion guides. So if you can't see like red green, but you can look up that this specific red that was used, and that will look good. So. What's your verdict on brushes? Should I spend the money on like expensive brushes, or should I just get like some cheap shit?
Start with a good starter pack of official miniatures brushes and use those.
Okay.
And then start shopping around. You're looking for watercolor brushes mostly.
Okay. So
you can use like pure synthetic, or you can use a blend of synthetic and natural, or you can use 100% natural. In the end, you'll kind of decide what you like for the bristle flow, but you have to like kind of experiment that way.
Yeah.
So brushes are a little tricky.
When I go to the craft store, they always have like tons of brushes that are marked specifically for acrylic. So I should not be buying those.
You could. I don't have necessarily a ton of experience for those, but I think they tend to be a bit stiffer and meant for larger applications. But that doesn't mean they don't have their own purpose.
Yeah.
Especially for dry brushing, or if you need to batch paint large areas, or you're hitting a tank. Typically, you want a brush that is bigger to hold more paint, so that it doesn't dry out as fast as you're working with that large surface. Hopefully something with a big belly and a sharp point.
Yeah.
And that's where watercolor paints usually have the advantage. They're often longer, and they are built to hold a little reservoir of paint, so you can work with them a little longer.
I see. Okay. I'm going to go try that.
Yeah.
I literally always just buy the acrylic ones they have at the hobby store. But
I always use my brushes way too long.
Like everyone has that like one favorite brush that they should have thrown out like 20 years ago.
Yeah, that's right.
It's got like 3 hairs left, and one of them sticks out at a 90-degree angle.
Yeah, but I just learned how to paint with it, so I never really.
Well, that's the other thing too. Like, I think backing up for a second, this kind of applies to all of it. Like, something that you're comfortable with and know how to use and get the most out of can often be like better than like a theoretically better tool or product that you then have to kind of learn and get good at or figure out. Like, sometimes buying is like when contrast paints were coming out, there were a couple of people saying that like it was actually more difficult for them to use them because they were so used to like the flow of using regular paints.
Yeah.
So you do have to like learn a different way of painting with contrast, and everything is like that. Like some people, don't like washes still. I think most people got on board with washes, but some people just prefer doing it the old-fashioned way, or doing all the tricks that people used to do before washes were like regularly available.
Newfangled washes.
Yeah.
Highlighted.
I remember when the only thing was like there was like one Games Workshop wash and it was brown, and if you wanted something wash, you just put that one on.
Yep.
So everything else.
Just something. That's it.
Yeah. That's the one. Otherwise, if you want anything else, and people had to do tricks like you would like paint the chainmail like black and then only dry brush over it.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but yeah, like a tool you're comfortable with and enjoy using,
And take care of it. Take care of your tools. Like, you could buy official brush soap, and it's very good. It's probably exactly what you need overall to clean your brushes, which you should do often. Even if it's a cheap brush or expensive brush, doesn't matter. Just clean it. It's going to work better for you. It's going to last longer. But you can also just use like a hand soap, like a bar of soap. You can just rub your bristles in there, get it all sudsy, rinse it off, do that a couple of times. And you'll get all the paint out of the ferrules, and the tip will perform nicer. Just the dried paint's going to make your brushes worse, no matter how cheap or expensive they are.
Also, if you clean your tools and keep them safe, you're not going to get like an STD.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want... How can we tie this into miniatures? I don't know. I don't think we can.
Be careful where your tool goes.
Yes, that's right. Be careful where your tool goes. So, let's see. So we talked about blue tack, and we talked about wash recipes and inks and dropper bottles. But we need somewhere to put them, right? So how are you painting with these paints? If you had the Citadel paint pot, which is what a lot of people like, you can only just like dip your brush into there. You can't really pour it out or anything. Well, you can. It's just going to be a big mess.
You can kind of like squelch it.
Yeah. So once you have moved on and you don't want those pots anymore to drip your brushes into, you need to apply those paints to a surface so that you can paint with them. So you might look at something like a regular palette that artists would use, so a dry plastic, but you will find that they will dry out a little too fast. So acrylics are fast drying, and you put them on a flat plastic surface. Typically, you don't have a very long working time.
Yeah.
Or you could buy something like this, which is a silicone little reservoir, like a fidget popper. And these are very deep and very shallow, so they don't dry out quite as fast with these. Less surface area, so they'll make.
I wonder if you could use like a silicone, like ice cube mold.
Oh, I bet, but something small. Like these are not very big.
Oh yeah.
Let's see, towel for scale. So that's a good option, and a lot of people will like these also for putting washes into, especially if you have a dropper bottle. Yeah. The disadvantage of the dropper bottle wash is that you can't dip it in like you can with a Citadel pot wash. So putting it in these little reservoirs means you have somewhere to dip your brush into and then work with the wash as you go along.
Yeah, I'll admit, whenever I do washes, I always end up putting them because I have this like really cheap wet palette I got from like AliExpress or something. That would work fine. It costs nothing. But for washes, I always end up taking like a plastic mini space and turning it upside down, so it's like a tiny cup, and putting the wash in there. Because it doesn't really work otherwise. I mean, you can put them in like a soda cup, but that might be like Coca-Cola in there still. So
wherever you can minimize the surface area really is the best bet.
Yeah.
And with the cheap wet palettes you can buy, and then you're good to go. You buy the little kit, I guess, off AliExpress.
You can you can look up guides for like making your own wet palette, but that's again like when we're down in like the $3 market, I don't want to like make it. I just want to pay somebody $3 to ship it to me from China.
You can get the advantage though, like say this is my favorite here. I made this custom to what I like. So it's partially parchment paper, and then also have this wet area where I can moisten my brush as I go along.
Oh, you get
like for me, I know what I want, and it's very nice to make your own custom palette. So just sponge, and then some of that Swedish cleaning sponge, which is like super awesome. Fill it up with water, and then you put your parchment paper over, and then you have your surface to work with that keeps your paints hydrated. And for me, I'll leave wet area reserved because when I dry brush, I like to make sure that the bristles are not completely dry. So I'll dip it on the sponge side first, then brush it off on my hand just till it's like not dry, basically.
Yeah.
It's pretty close to being dry. And then when you use your dry brush paints, which also apply very nicely on the palette, I usually wipe them off on a bit of cardboard. You can see how the surface is running. So if it's a little bit too wet or not. And then it's good to go. Just dry brush away.
Nice. So it's not really a dry brush, but it's not a wet brush. It's just like a medium brush.
Yeah, it is dry brushing. It's just not the paint hasn't dried already, which would be terrible. That's when you get the powdery effect, as if your paint has gotten too dry.
Yeah.
So that's something like someone who's new to painting may try the dry brushing technique and not realize that the name dry brush is a bit of a misnomer because you still need your paint to be fluid to a degree.
The first time I bought, because Games Workshop does, I don't know if they do them anymore, but they do these paints that are specifically for dry brushing, and I have a couple of them. I really like them, but the first time I bought one, it was on accident, and I thought it was like defective because it's just like gooey gunk in there. Then I realized it's a dry brush on there. Like, what is this witchery? And then I tried it and like, oh, this is way easier. I always get paranoid with dry brushing because I think everyone, when they started painting, has had that experience where you like go to dry brush, but you don't quite wipe off the brush enough, and you just like slather.
That's where you want the cardboard, because then you can dry brush on it and see
you can kind of
what
see
consistency you're at. And best of all, if you do that often enough, then you'll have a nice color texturing that's kind of like varied in place to place, and then you put it behind your miniatures and you can take little pictures of them.
Oh, there you go.
And then it's not just like a boring background or your messy hobby desk.
Now they're in cyberspace.
I'm going to catch up with chat a bit. I think ours has died once again, but it's still going through YouTube.
Yeah.
So creative project for busy people. You get a red, yellow, blue of good paint and be able to mix lots of colors. Absolutely.
That is true.
Yeah. Brush soap isn't expensive and lasts damn year forever is also true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, that's the thing with a lot of these things. You're not really like, even paint is the thing you're going to go through the fastest, but even then, you don't necessarily go through it that fast. I mean, you will have people who've had the same pot of paint for like a decade.
Yeah, some things you want to start with first, and then some things you can move on to second. I'd say brush soap second, because you can still clean your brushes with regular soap.
It's one of those things where I think it comes down to like, there's like a certain kind of person who is like, will want to take extra good care of their brushes, and there's a certain kind of person where cleaning them with water is good. Mm-hmm. So if it's worth it to you, it's worth it to you.
And then Ludanto suggests scale transferable disease.
Or STD. Is that what happened to Warhammer guys who like get bigger and bigger over the years?
That's right. Yeah, it leads to uncontrolled growth.
Yeah, that's how we have to.
Don't take care of your tools.
Like heroic 32 millimeter.
That's right. And then Noise is saying for washes and dropper bottles, uses tattoo ink cools. CUOS. I'm not familiar with that. They're small, maybe 3 times the volume of those fidget popper cups. Okay. Oh, I see. Yeah, I think they're like little metal cups.
Okay. That's like perfect for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I just realized I've been like chewing on this pen the whole podcast, so now I look like a doofus.
No, it's good.
It's pretty tasty. You guys should check out these pens. They're pretty good.
We should be sponsored by that brand of pen.
We could start putting like Amazon links, just random shit in the comments. Like, here, go buy diaper wipes and dry cat food on our recommendations. Oh, it was supposed to be cups.
That's what he says now, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. I was like, okay, that's probably just like a tattoo artist term. I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, just the old cools.
Yeah. Like, hey, get the kudos from the back.
Yeah. And then my final reference to a video I've made, and everything we've learned today from my cheap hobby techniques would be how to paint a cheap dollar store dinosaur with contrast. So that's the last bit. You buy your cheap miniatures. You don't have to care about them too much, honestly. But when you have something like a cheap plastic, you have to think about the primer you're putting on.
Yes.
Because a rattle can primer may or may not react with the plastic. If it's already been painted to begin with, then chances are it'll be okay. Well, it doesn't melt. It gets tacky. It's kind of weird.
Oh, I see.
Which you can clean off. It's not a big deal. If they get tacky, then just throw them in whatever cleaning solution you have on hand, like Super Clean or LA's Totally Awesome, isopropyl alcohol. I've never used Dettol, but people say it's good. Something like that. Something built for stripping paint without melting plastic would be fine. Instead, you can think about 2 different kinds of primer. You could think about a surface primer that Vallejo makes. They are a brush-on primer. You could buy them in super big bottles, and they're pretty cheap overall. It's like less than $20 for the primer. Or you can try to go cheaper and do, I can't remember if it's pronounced gesso or gesso, but it's an artist's primer. So typically they use that for painting canvases. And I think it's most commonly found in white, but you can also get it in black if you wanted to.
Yeah, there are. I want to say I've seen gray ones too, but I'm not sure. Might imagine that. But yeah, that's a pretty popular option, and that will stick to kind of the cheap, like it's almost like semi-rubbery, like soy plastic a lot of times.
Yeah, exactly, and that'll just slap it on. That's when you want the big brush again with the fat belly and a big tip, or a sharp tip.
That might also
coat it,
because a common issue with 172 scale plastics is that some paint will just like not bite well on them.
Yeah, exactly.
So one thing I found is that like Krylon, like spray paint, will stick to those like perfectly fine, and then you can paint over them like just fine. I don't know if that's only available stateside. It's like one of those brands. It's usually sold as like paint plus primer, and it's kind of for like I think for like chairs and other stuff. So it's really like hard wearing, but it doesn't obscure details at all. Like I've used on like really small figures, but like anything you prime in that, it'll stick.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. And that's
or
your
like,
other good option for sure. Is if you can find things like Krylon. Some people see automotive primers as well. I've only ever used Krylon and Rust-Oleum.
I've used the Rust-Oleum, and that works absolutely fine as well. The thing is, especially with being cheap, that you can get them for like half the price of Minis paint primers.
Yeah, exactly. That's one thing I would say you never have to touch a Minis paint primer ever in your life. It is a complete waste of money. Don't just skip them.
Yeah. I will say
you don't need those in your life.
Get like one bottle of like brush on, because sometimes you just want to have that on hand.
Yeah. Sorry. I mean, just for the rattle can style, like just skip rattle can primer.
Just get like the other thing is with the Krylon can, the Rust-Oleum cans, you can get them in like a handful of colors. So if you're a little clever, because sometimes you'll find like Krylon used to do these like camouflage ones that were like pretty close to like an American like olive drab. So you can save like a bunch of time by priming your like German or World War II Americans or something in that, or you get a gray you can do. So yeah, the only time I have like specifically bought a Minis primer was doing some like World War I French, and there's one of the Army paint like Wolf Gray or something, which is basically Space Wolf Gray. That one looks like close enough. You can just like go over a Mini twice with it, and the uniform color is like.
I find they often tend to be a little less hardy as well. Those paints, except for like old Games Workshop white, like from the '90s. That's always a nightmare to clean off a miniature. Like
that's the thing with
that stuff is immortal. It's hard to get off.
Yeah, the Krylon ones are like really durable again, because I think it's supposed to be used for like furniture and stuff that gets handled. So like it's really like solid. I have never had an issue with it, and it'll stick even on those like soft plastic figures.
I would like to thank Noised for telling me how to pronounce gesso, and also appreciate that he misspelled pronouns, so it's pro bounce.
I mean, sometimes you don't want an amateur bounce. Like
exactly.
Bounce, you got to be a pro about it. Otherwise, you're gonna hurt your back. Some of us are old and fat, a little more sensitive and tender. We're kind of coming up in like an hour and a half, so I think we're sort of we've been cheap in many ways.
I want to say one last thing before we go.
Yes,
in relation to primer, is that if you want to spend the money on an airbrush, I would recommend a single action siphon feed, which is super unpopular amongst miniatures painters. Solely because if you are willing to rattle can something, you get no losses from a single action siphon feed. It's not going to be any worse than rattle canning. And it's going to be a lot easier to mix up on your own for priming or base coating. And that's all you need to use it for, and they're super easy to clean. You won't get a lot of the problems cleaning them that you will with the dual action.
Gotcha.
It's just like, it's good starter mode. No one ever cares about them for some reason in miniature painting, but they're actually pretty terrific. I use them all the time.
Yeah. So that's nice.
And then, so for painting that cheap dinosaur, that's the only thing. You just need to figure out the primers you need to use, and then work with the tools you have now to work your way up. So let's say you want to paint it with contrast because it's a cheap dinosaur and you shouldn't really put that much effort to do it anyway. You dry brush. So you can even use a regular craft paint. There's enough medium and pigment in there that you can easily dry brush with it. So you dry brush it up and then slap on either a contrast paint or the homemade washes or heavy body washes that you made. There you go. Cheapskate to the max.
I guess the last thing to kind of throw in there is, ironically, like your paint supplies is probably where you're going to be spending most of your money, because you're buying that not for one project. You're buying that for, like they will last you a while.
It's true. One bottle of matte medium, like a giant chug, should be roughly the same as 2 pots of contrast paint. Price-wise. So, if you're planning on spending like $100 to build some armies or build one army or whatever you're doing, you're probably spending like the same amount on like paints, but those paints will also last you for the next like 20 armies you're making. And then you can just add like a little bit here and there. A lot of people will get, like, if I go to a gaming store and I'm not buying anything else, I'll just grab like one bottle of paint or something, like a color that I don't quite have. So you'll add, you can add to your paints like a little bit over time and kind of build them out. So
don't be afraid to like spend a little more paint wise. Just in comparison to the minis, you're probably spending more on paints than you are on minis. And if you want to buy terrain, you're going to spend more, honestly, on the terrain than the minis too. But as we've said, you can go cheap on all of them. And you may want to, you know, maybe you don't want to go cheap on the minis, but you do want to go cheap on the paint stuff, or the other way around. You know, you don't have to be cheap on everything, although you can. So, and that's a thing with a lot of, when you see like guys online, people talk about like building an army for $50 or building an army for $200 or something. A lot of times they're not, you know, factoring in that if you're starting from scratch and have to buy paints, right?
Mm-hmm,
like,
exactly.
They're assuming you have like hobby stuff and you're just getting like the minis. But, you know, I mean, in that case, I mean, you can make it, you know, if you shoplift an army, it's pretty cheap. So you just have to like run out of the Games Workshop store with it like under your arm. So if you steal somebody else's army, if you steal somebody else's army, you don't even have to paint it. It comes pre-painted. Pro-painted, too.
Yeah, exactly. And often in a case. You got a case already?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, that makes it easier. An army that is easy to steal is also well-painted and easy to carry.
That's the real way to be a cheapskate.
So, yes. As long as you can stay ahead of the cops. You don't want to be the dude who goes to do a hard time because you jack somebody's arm.
What are you in for? Warhammer.
Yeah. The other dude murdered like 3 dudes. He just looks at you like, you're fucking hell. Can we get this guy out of here? Like, can we get a drug dealer in here instead? Somebody who's hardcore.
Yeah, there we
go. I guess open the floor to like final comments from the chat. If people are still awake, they haven't gotten lost in their dinner.
Yeah. Usually takes about 5 seconds to catch up. And then everyone has to type.
Yeah. Put down their lasagna or whatever. I don't really have anything to like show today because what I've been working on is the same I was working on last time, which is Mystic Space stuff. But that's cool.
I won at Mordheim.
Oh, you won
the first
a game
time ever. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Because it was the treasure scenario. So you have to roll to see which building it was. And thankfully for me, it was in the building right beside me in the end.
Oh, just fill it with goblins.
Yeah, so I just ran away from my opponent and took the treasure away.
Hey.
I just threw squigs at him to slow him down and ran off.
Yeah. Victory.
My wizard got stupidity, so he just kind of stood there and amazingly didn't die. So yeah, my first win was a completely goblin way, which was great.
Absolutely. There's always the solution of just like filling the objective with so many dudes that they can't kill all of them. And then if there's one left, you still win.
Yeah, exactly. Slow them down with bodies. And so today I'm adding 5 snotlings to my army.
To get
more meats to throw in the grinder.
More things to throw in the path of the enemy.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I'll be working on next. And Jason says soup. Noise says don't forget to pro bounce all your cools. Words of wisdom.
Well, I suppose with that we are about ready to
heart attack.
Wind up and wind down. We will be back in 2 weeks.
Well,
if everyone wants to do it.
Is it longer? 1, 2, 3.
No. We're just getting no hearts at all.
Come on.
Nope.
No hearts today. Sorry, folks.
Yeah, hard times, but not hard times.
We'll
We'll be back at North American time next time, and we will talk about. I don't know if we know yet. So
will be.
You'll know basically
9th.
As soon as we do.
Yeah, Wednesday the 9th is when we'll see next.
It'll be
maybe we'll have special guests. Maybe not. I don't know.
It could be. Maybe we'll have a mundane guest.
Oh yeah,
some dude.
If you were a mundane person, just reach out and contact us, and we'll talk.
Do you have no idea what Space Marines are? Why didn't you come tell us?
Yeah,
we'll have
join the show.
Like, what are these little things?
Why are you guys even doing this? If that's the question you're asking, we want you.
Yes. Why is a 45-year-old weirdo painting little plastic soldiers? What is wrong with you?
All right. Peace, folks. Take care. Bye-bye.
Peace.
This episode of Bad Internet Friends was streamed live on YouTube and Twitch. There is a North American-friendly live stream every second Wednesday of the month and a European-friendly live stream every fourth Monday of the month.